The human walked alone on a dusty road, his boots heavy, his stomach empty. He had been traveling for days without food, without money, and without a place to stay. When he reached the alien village, he thought it would be the same as everywhere. Else, strange eyes would stare, doors would close, and whispers would follow him until he left. But this time, something was different. The village was quiet, too quiet, as if everyone was waiting for something. Alien children stopped their games and watched him with wide, glowing eyes. Mothers pulled their little ones closer, but did not turn away. Men, or at least what looked like men, stood by the huts, their expressions unreadable. The human raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am only passing through," he said. Softly, "I need food, maybe some work, nothing more." The words came out heavy, filled with both hope and shame. It was not the first time he had begged, and he feared it would not be the last. Then an elder stepped forward. She was tall, with silver skin and deep lines on her face. Her eyes shone like cold fire, but her voice was warm. "You are human," she said, as if tasting the word. He nodded, unsure what to expect. "You seek work?" she asked. "Yes," he replied, "any kind of work. I can fight, I can build, I can farm. Just give me a chance." The villagers began whispering among themselves. Some looked at him with pity, some with curiosity, and some with strange excitement. The elder raised her hand, and silence fell again. "You are welcome here," she said finally. "We have a job for you." The human blinked in surprise. No one had ever offered so quickly. "What kind of job?" He asked carefully. The elder only smiled. "Important work. Work no one else can do." They led him through the village, past huts made of stone and wood. The air smelled of smoke, herbs, and something sweet he could not name. Everywhere he walked, eyes followed, especially from young women who whispered and covered their mouths when he looked their way. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from confusion. Why were they looking at him like that? Finally, they stopped at a large hall near the center of the village. Inside, a fire burned, and shadows danced across the walls. The elder gestured for him to sit, and food was brought: bread, fruit, and roasted meat. The human ate quickly, almost like an animal, too hungry to care. When he finished, the elder spoke again. "You will not be a fighter. You will not be a builder. Your job is more sacred." Her words hung heavy in the air. The human frowned. "Sacred? I don't understand." "You will," she said. "Tomorrow. Tonight, you rest." He wanted to ask more, but the villager's eyes silenced him. They were watching him with something between respect and hunger. It unsettled him, but he was too tired to fight it. That night, he lay on a soft bed for the first time in years. The house they gave him was larger than he needed, with warm blankets and a full water jug, but he could not sleep easily. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the weight of those stares. He remembered the young women whispering, the way they smiled at him with secrets in their eyes. It was not the way strangers looked at a poor traveler. It was the way someone might look at a prize. He turned on the bed, his thoughts restless. What kind of job could they mean? He wondered, why give him food, shelter, and comfort before he even worked? Why treat him as if he was already chosen for something greater? He pressed his hand against his chest, feeling his own heartbeat. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the answer would not be simple. The night grew darker, and outside his window, he heard footsteps. Soft, careful, almost shy. He sat up, listening. Voices whispered in the alien tongue, then faded into the distance. He was not sure if he imagined. The sound of giggles, a cold shiver ran through him. What were they planning for him? Morning came with the sound of drums, slow and deep. The elder returned, her silver skin glowing in the sunlight. She looked at him with pride, almost as if she had been waiting for him all her life. "Today," she said, "you begin." The human swallowed hard. "Please, tell me, what is my job?" He asked again, her lips curled into a strange smile. "You will see soon enough," she replied. The human's heart raced, fear mixing with curiosity. For the first time in years, he had food, shelter, and safety. But in that moment, he realized something. He might have just walked into a trap. The villagers were waiting, their eyes glowing with expectation. And the human, still unaware of the truth, stepped forward to meet his fate. The human woke early, his body still heavy from sleep, but his mind restless. He remembered the elder's words from last night. "Today you begin." But what work was this? No tools had been given, no instructions, no clear duty. Yet, when he stepped outside, the villagers were already waiting, watching. Children pointed at him and laughed softly. Women whispered among themselves, their eyes lingering on him longer. Then was comfortable. Even the men, or what little remained of them, nodded in a strange way. As if they were agreeing to something, the human felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on him. It was not the look given to a worker, but to something rare, something valuable. The elder led him through the village again, but this time the people followed. They carried baskets of fruit, flowers, and cloth. It felt less like the start of a job and more like the beginning of a ceremony. When he tried to ask, "What is my task today?" the elder only smiled. "You will understand soon. For now, eat, drink, and rest. The work will come to you." The human frowned. "Rest. But I came here for labor." "I am not lazy," he said firmly. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder, her skin cool like stone. "You misunderstand. Your strength is not in your arms. It is in something deeper." The words gave him no comfort, only more questions. Hours passed, and no one handed him a shovel, a spear, or even a broom instead. He was taken to a house filled with soft cushions and blankets. Meals were brought to him, sweet fruits and spiced meat. Women entered and placed flowers on the table, their movements slow, deliberate, almost like a dance. They smiled at him, but their smiles were not ordinary. They carried meaning, invitation, promise. The human grew uneasy. This was not work. This was worship. He had worked in mines before, breaking rock until his hands bled. He had worked on farms, pulling weeds until his back ached. But here, they treated him like a guest, like a king, like his heart skipped a beat. No. It could not be that. At night, the village grew alive with music. Drums echoed, voices sang in low tones, and fires burned high into the sky. The villagers gathered, circling him, their eyes glowing in the firelight. The elder stood tall and raised her hands. "This is the one," she declared, "the human who will carry our hope." The crowd cheered, their voices rolling like thunder. The human's throat tightened. "Hope? What do you mean? What is this job?" he demanded. But the elder only said, "Tomorrow the truth will be clear." Again he was given a bed. Again he was left in comfort. But again he could not sleep, for outside his window came the sound of footsteps once more, soft, careful, as if the villagers were watching even while he rested. The next day brought more confusion. Young alien women began to appear at his house in small groups. Each wore colorful garments, their hair braided with flowers and stones. They brought him gifts, necklaces, bracelets, woven cloth, and when he tried to return them, they only laughed. "No human," one whispered, her eyes shining. "It is you who must give us something." The human felt his chest grow tight. "What do you want from me?" he asked, but the women only looked at one another and smiled. They did not answer. Not with words. Instead, one of them reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm, her touch lingering. Her eyes full of intent. He pulled back quickly, his heart racing. This was no job he had imagined. This was not about farming, hunting, or building. This was something far more personal, far more dangerous. He wanted to leave. But the door was guarded by villagers bowing their heads. He was not a prisoner, not exactly, But he was not free either. The elder returned that evening, her face serious. Her voice low. "You feel the weight of it now," she said. "You sense what we ask of you." The human clenched his fists. "No one has told me anything." He said sharply, "I deserve to know." The elder's eyes softened. "Yes, you do. Tomorrow we will show you the truth. But know this, you are not here by chance. You are here because fate chose you." The human stared at her, his pulse pounding in his ears. Fate. He had never believed in such things. He had only believed in survival, in finding food, and staying alive one more day. But here, in this strange village, the rules of life seemed different, and deep inside, a dangerous thought began to grow. What if the job they gave him was not work at all? That night, he sat awake, listening to the sounds outside, the laughter of children, the singing of women, the deep beat of drums. All of it carried the same message, one he was beginning to understand. They did not bring him here to build houses. They did not bring him here to fight enemies. They brought him here for something else, something he was not ready to accept. The human closed his eyes, his body trembling with unease. Tomorrow, they said, the truth would be revealed, but already he feared he knew the answer, and if he was right, his life would never be the same again. The human awoke with the sound of drums echoing through the alien village. They were slow at first, like the steady beating of a heart, then grew louder, heavier, as if calling him out of his bed. He rubbed his tired eyes, still uneasy from the whispers and stares of the past 2 days. The villagers had not told him what his job was. But he already felt like he was part of something he could not escape when he stepped outside. The morning sun painted the stone huts gold. Villagers stood in groups, their faces glowing with anticipation. Children ran past him, laughing. While women watched him with eyes that burned like secrets, the men said nothing, only bowed their heads slightly as if acknowledging a role he had not agreed to. The elder approached, her silver skin gleaming, her long robe flowing like water. "It is time," she said simply, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. The human's throat went dry. "Time for what?" he asked. The elder only smiled in that unsettling way. "Tonight, you will understand your purpose." The day passed in strange rituals. The human was bathed in scented water, his hair brushed and oiled until it shone. Cloths of bright color were placed on his shoulders, and strange symbols were painted on his arms. He wanted to refuse, to shout, to break free, but the villagers treated every step like holy preparation. And a part of him, small but undeniable, felt fear of insulting their faith as the sun fell. The air filled with music again. Drums and flutes played, fires were lit, and the village gathered in the great hall. The human was seated at the center, a feast laid before him, but he could not eat. The tension in his chest was too great. He looked around and saw them, the young alien women dressed in shimmering robes, their hair braided with silver threads, entered the hall one by one. They moved with grace, their steps slow and deliberate, their eyes never leaving his. Whispers rushed through the crowd as the women stood together at the far end of the hall. The human stomach tightened, his heart beating like the drums. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The elder raised her hands, and silence fell. "Tonight," she declared, "the human begins his true work." A cheer erupted from the villagers, echoing through the hall like thunder. The human's palms grew sweaty, his voice trembling as he asked, "What work? What do you mean?" The elder looked at him, her eyes soft but filled with command. "You will give us children. That is the task fate has placed upon you." The words struck him like a blade. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The women stepped closer, their faces calm, their eyes filled with expectation. The human pushed back his chair, his body tense. You want me to?" The elder nodded slowly. Yes, our males are few, sick, and weak. Without you, our people will die. A heavy silence filled the hall, broken only by the crackling of fire. The human's thoughts raced. He had fought wars, bled on battlefields, worked mines until his bones ached, but never had he faced a request like this. This was not labor of the hands, but labor of the flesh. Of the soul, the women came closer, their perfumes filling the air. One reached out, touching his arm gently. Her touch was not forceful, but pleading, desperate. He saw her eyes up close, bright, trembling, filled with hope. Not the hope of a lover, but the hope of survival. It was then he realized this was not about desire. It was about life itself. The human stood, his voice shaking with anger and fear. No, you cannot decide this for me. I am not your tool. I am not some machine. The villagers gasped. The women froze, and the elder raised her hand for silence. You are right, she said softly. But listen well, human. You have power no one here possesses. We are dying. The children are fewer each year. Our bloodline fades. You alone can save us. Her words were heavy, but her eyes held no cruelty, only sorrow. The human's anger began to tremble, melting into confusion, into something heavier. He looked at the women again, not with fear, but with pity. They were not predators, they were survivors, forced into this path by their dying race. Still, his heart rebelled. Could he really accept such a role? Could he give himself to strangers, to a future he had never chosen? Would this make him a savior or a prisoner? The elder placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "Tonight is only the beginning. You may refuse. But know this, without you, we have no tomorrow." The human closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. All his life he had been unwanted, forgotten, cast aside, and now, for the first time, an entire people wanted him, needed him, not for his strength in battle, not for his skill with tools, but for something deeper, something he had never considered his worth. The firelight flickered, the villagers watched, the women waited. The human stood at the edge of his choice, and though his lips whispered no answer yet, his silence spoke louder than words. The human did not sleep that night. He sat by the fire, in his small house, staring into the flames, his thoughts heavy. The elder's words echoed again and again inside his mind, "Without you, we have no tomorrow." It was a plea, but also a burden, a chain that wrapped around his chest and would not let go. He remembered the faces of the alien women, their eyes glowing with hope. Not a single one of them had looked at him with anger or cruelty. Instead, they had looked at him as if he were light in the darkness, as if his very existence carried the key to their survival. But he was only a man, tired, scarred, broken from years of wandering. How could he carry the future of an entire village on his shoulders? Morning came, and with it, silence. The villagers no longer gathered outside his door. No whispers, no footsteps, no offerings of fruit or flowers. It was as if the whole village was holding its breath, waiting for his decision. The human felt their eyes even when he walked alone, eyes full of expectation, eyes that made his heart beat faster with guilt and confusion. Later, the elder came to him again, her silver skin glowing in the daylight. She looked at him calmly, though her voice trembled with age. "You know the truth now," she said softly. "But the choice is still yours." The human clenched his fists. "Choice? You call this a choice?" he asked, his voice sharp. The elder nodded. "Yes, you may leave. We will not chain you. But if you go, you must know, our children will fade, our people will vanish, and the blame will rest on the one who walked away." Her words cut deeper than a blade. Leave, and he would carry guilt forever. Stay, and he would become something he had never asked to be, a savior, a father to children who would not even know his name. His heart pulled in two directions, each as heavy as stone, that evening. The villagers lit fires across the hills. The air was filled with the smell of herbs and smoke. Men, women, and children gathered, their faces solemn, their voices low. Songs were sung not of joy, but of sorrow, as if they were already mourning their future. The human sat among them, silent, listening. He could not escape the truth. They were dying, and he was the last hope standing before them. A young alien girl approached him then, not more than 15 in human years. Her eyes were wide, her voice trembling as she said, "My mother cries. At night, she fears I will never know the joy of children, the warmth of family. Please, human, save us." The human froze, his chest tightening. This was not a trick, not a game. This was desperation as raw as hunger. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, and she smiled through her tears. That smile burned into his heart like fire, but fear still haunted him. What if he said yes? What if he became their father of generations? Would he lose himself? Lose the last piece of freedom he still owned? Would he be trapped in this village forever, unable to leave, bound by children and duty until his last breath? The thought terrified him. Yet another thought whispered back was freedom worth more than lives. That night, the elder brought him. To the center of the village, a great fire burned. Shadows dancing on the stone walls. The entire village stood in a circle, their voices quiet, their eyes locked on him. The elder raised her hands and said, "The human stands before us. Tonight, he must choose. Will he abandon us, or will he carry our hope?" The crowd fell silent, waiting. The human's heart thundered in his chest. His throat dry, he looked at their faces, children clutching their mothers, women with trembling smiles, men too weak to fight for their people. He saw fear, pain, and something more, trust. They trusted him even when they barely knew him. No one had ever trusted him like this before, not in all his wandering years. He stepped forward, his voice low, heavy with the weight of choice. "I do not know if I am strong enough for this." "I am only one man," the elder nodded. "One man is enough. One man can change everything." The villagers whispered, their voices rising like the wind. "Stay, stay, stay." They chanted, their hope flowing into the night sky. The human closed his eyes. He thought of his past, of the battles he had fought, the hunger he had endured, the loneliness that had carved his soul. For years he had wandered, with no purpose, no home, no reason to keep walking, and now here was a people begging him to be their reason. Their future, perhaps fate, had led him here, not to break him, but to give him meaning. When he opened his eyes, the fire reflected in them. He raised his head and spoke, his voice firm this time. "I will not leave you. I will stay. I will help you." The village erupted with cheers, tears streaming down faces, hands raised to the sky. Children danced, women cried with joy, men bowed their heads in gratitude. The elder smiled, her old eyes wet. "Then tonight, human, you are no longer a wanderer. Tonight, you are one of us." But as the cheers filled the air, the human's chest grew heavy, for deep inside, he knew this choice was not just about helping. It was about giving his life to something he did not yet understand, and once he had stepped on this path, there would be no turning back. The human stood at the edge of the firelight, his chest heavy with the choice he had just made. The villagers' cheers still echoed through the night air, their voices ringing with hope and joy. They danced, they sang, they treated him like a savior. But inside, his heart was restless. He had promised to stay, to help them, but what did that truly mean? The elder placed a hand on his arm and guided him away from the crowd. "Tonight begins your first duty," she said softly, her voice both kind and unyielding. The human swallowed hard, his body tense. "My first duty." "Ah," he asked. The elder nodded. "Yes. Tonight, you are no longer only human, you are the father of our future." The words hit him like a weight, heavier than stone. He followed her through the quiet village, the music of celebration fading behind them. They stopped before a small house, its doorway lit by glowing lanterns. The elder's eyes met his. "Inside, one waits for you. She has been chosen, and she accepts you." The human's breath caught, his hands trembling slightly. "Chosen," he whispered. The elder nodded again. "She is ready, and she is willing. Do not see this as a burden. See it as life returning to our people." With that, the elder left him alone at the door. The human stood frozen for a long moment. His mind was torn between fear, duty, and the pounding of his own heart. He had fought monsters before, faced death more times than he could count. But this was a different kind of battle. It was not against an enemy, was against himself. Finally, he stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, filled with the scent of herbs and sweet oils. On a low bed sat a young alien woman, her skin glowing faintly in the lantern light. Her hair was braided with silver threads. Her eyes wide but steady. She looked at him, not with fear, but with quiet determination. The human's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to ask if she was truly willing. But before he could, she placed her hand gently over her heart. "I am ready," she said softly, her voice carrying both strength and vulnerability. The human felt his chest ache. This was not lust, not desire. This was survival. He sat beside her slowly, unsure, his hands shaking. She reached out and touched his arm, her fingers warm, her touch tender. "You are afraid," she whispered, "but so am I." Her honesty struck him harder than any blade ever had. For the first time, he saw her not as a stranger, not as part of a desperate people, but as a woman just as uncertain, just as human in her emotions as he was. The silence stretched between them. Filled only by the soft crackle of the lantern, the human finally spoke, his voice low, almost trembling. "I do not know if I can do this. Not like this, not as a command." She looked at him gently. "Then do not see it as a command. See me, not the village. See me, not the duty." Her words loosened the chains around his chest. He looked into her eyes and saw truth, their truth, and something unexpected. Not only duty, but trust. A kind of quiet faith that he would not hurt her. For years he had wandered the stars, forgotten and nameless. And now, here was someone who trusted him with her body, her future, her life. Slowly, carefully, he let go of his fear. That night was not about commands or orders, it was about connection. And as the fire burned low, the human shared his first work with her, not in cruelty, not in coldness, but in something gentler, something almost tender. Hours passed, and the night grew deep. When it was over, the woman lay beside him, her breathing soft, her eyes half closed. "You gave me hope," she whispered, her hand resting lightly on his chest. The human stared at the ceiling, his mind still heavy. Hope. He had given her hope, but what about himself? What had he just agreed to become? Sleep would not come to him. He rose quietly, stepping outside into the cool night air. The village was silent now. The fires dying, the songs fading into the dark. He stood under the alien sky, 2 moons glowing. Above, his heart beat hard against his ribs as he whispered to himself, "What have I done?" The elder appeared from the shadows, her eyes calm, her voice steady. "You have done what was needed," she said, "and in time you will see what you have given us." The human turned toward her, his face torn between pride and fear. "And what have I lost?" he asked bitterly. The elder looked at him for a long time before answering. "Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything." But what you gave tonight will echo through generations. Her words left him with no comfort, only more questions as dawn crept over the horizon. Painting the village in soft light, the human stood alone. Knowing this was only the beginning, one night had changed him forever. And tomorrow, more would come, because in the eyes of the village, he was no longer a wanderer, no longer free. He was the father of generations, and his first night was only the start. The human did not know how many days had passed since that first night. The village no longer looked at him as a guest or stranger. Everywhere he walked, the whispers followed, not of suspicion, now but of reverence. Children pointed at him and laughed with joy. Women bowed their heads with shy smiles, and men nodded with silent respect, but the weight on his shoulders grew heavier with each sunrise. For after the first woman came another, and then another, each one chosen carefully by the elder, each one stepping forward with hope in her eyes, and each time, the human felt his strength tested not just his body, but his spirit at first. He tried to resist, to ask for time, but the villagers looked at him with pleading faces, reminding him of his promise. Father of generations, they called him now. Not wanderer, not outsider, but father. It was a name that burned into him like fire, a title he could never escape. Nights became ceremonies, drums beat, fires glowed. And women approached him, one after the other. Each had her own fear, her own trembling hands, her own whispered words. And he gave himself to them, not with joy, not with passion, but with duty. The children of their people would carry his blood, and that was all that mattered to them. But what of him? Each morning he awoke more tired, his body sore, his heart heavy. The village feasted, celebrated, and sang of hope. But when he looked into the mirror of still water, he saw only a man fading, a man who is being broken, not by war, not by hunger, but by expectation. The elder visited him often, her voice calm, her eyes sharp. "You are saving us," she told him. "Every night you give us another tomorrow." The human nodded politely. But inside he felt empty. Was saving them worth losing himself? Soon the women began to swell with life. Alien mothers touched their stomachs with joy, whispering prayers to the unborn. The village filled with laughter again, and the elder proclaimed that the human had brought a new dawn. Everywhere he went, children followed him, calling him father even before they were born. He should have felt pride, yet all he felt was exhaustion one night. After another ceremony, he sat outside alone under the twin moons. His hands trembled. As he lit a small fire, his mind clouded. He remembered his old life wandering from world to world, alone but free. And now he was surrounded by people, yet more trapped than ever before. A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was one of the women. Her belly already round with his child, she sat beside him quietly, the firelight dancing in her eyes. "You look sad," she whispered. "Why? You have given us hope. You have given us life." The human forced a smile, but his heart ached. "Have I given life, or have I lost mine?" he asked softly. The woman touched his hand gently. "You are not lost. You are found. You are part of us now." Her words were kind, but they felt like chains. Every kind smile, every grateful tear, every whispered father, they were chains. Chains of love, chains of duty, chains he could never break without. Shattering the lives of all who now depended on him. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. Soon, babies were born, their cries filling the air with new life. The villagers rejoiced, holding the children high, showing their small hands and glowing eyes. Some looked more human, some more alien, but all were celebrated as miracles. The elder declared, "These are the first of many. The Father of generations has given us a future." The humans stood at the edge of the crowd, watching mothers cradle their newborns. The sound of their tiny cries pulled at his heart. For a moment, he felt warmth, pride even. But then the faces turned to him again, dozens of eyes filled with more expectation. It would not end. Here it would never end. That night, as he returned to his house, he found another waiting for him. A new woman, dressed in ritual clothes, her eyes filled with hope. The elder's words echoed in his mind. "You are saving us. Every night you give us another tomorrow." He closed his eyes, his chest heavy with both guilt and exhaustion. How many tomorrows would he have to give? How many pieces of himself would be left when it was all done? He stepped inside, because he could not refuse, and once again the fire burned low. The whispers filled the night. The human's body obeyed. But his soul drifted further away. He was no longer just one man. He was a vessel, a legacy, a myth in the making, but deep inside. He wondered if the man he once was would survive long enough to see the end. Years passed, though the human no longer counted them. Seasons changed in the alien village. The rains came and went. The moons waxed and waned, and the fires of celebration burned again and again. But through it all, one thing remained the same. The villagers looked to him. Always to him, not as a guest, not as a stranger, but as the father of generations. Children filled the streets now, their laughter echoing through the air. Some had alien eyes, glowing faintly in the dark. Others had human features, sharp and strong. They played together, climbed trees, ran through the fields, and shouted his name when they saw him. "Father, Father," they cried, running to hug his legs, their tiny hands clinging to him as if he was the sky itself. The human would smile, but inside his heart twisted. He had given them life, yes, but in doing so he had lost pieces of his own. His body was weaker. Now his hair streaked with gray. He was no longer the strong wanderer who had once walked into the village with nothing but empty hands. Now he was something else, a man who belonged to them and to their future. The elder, older now and frail, came to him often. She would sit beside him, watching the children play, and say, "You see, you have given them a world. You will never be forgotten." Her words were meant as comfort, but they weighed on him like chains. Immortality, yes, but not of his own choosing. At night, he sat alone by the fire, remembering who he once was, a wanderer, free to go anywhere, free to leave anyone behind. But that man was gone now, swallowed by duty, replaced by the father of generations. Sometimes he whispered to himself, "Did I save them, or did I bury myself?" One evening, when the stars lit the sky like 1,000 diamonds, a group of children gathered around him. One little boy with human eyes and alien markings on his skin tugged at his sleeve. "Father," the boy asked innocently, "why are you always sad?" The human's throat tightened, his eyes stinging. He pulled the boy close, resting a hand on his head. "I am not sad," he whispered, though the lie burned his tongue. "I am proud." The boy smiled, not knowing the truth, and in that moment, the human realized something. No matter how heavy the burden, no matter how much of himself he had lost, these children were real. They laughed, they breathed, they dreamed, and they carried pieces of him inside them. Perhaps that was enough. Years turned into more years, and the human grew old. The village around him thrived, no longer quiet and fading, but alive with music and growth. Fields stretched wider, homes grew larger, and new generations were born faster than the old ones faded. The people whispered legends of the human who came with nothing and gave everything. Stories painted him as a hero, a savior chosen by fate. But he knew the truth. He was only a man who had stumbled into a choice too heavy to refuse. One day, as he sat beneath a tree, children playing at his feet, the elder, now bent with age, came to him one last time. Her voice was weak, but steady. "You are tired," she said. The human nodded, his body aching with every breath. "Yes?" he whispered. I am tired." She placed her hand on his shoulder, her eyes soft, then rest. "You have done more than enough. Your legacy will never fade." That night he lay in his bed, the sounds of the village drifting in through the window. Children's laughter, women's songs, the beat of distant drums, life, endless and unbroken. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt no fear. Perhaps he had lost himself. But he had given something greater in return. When dawn came, the village was quiet. The father of generations had breathed his last, but he did not leave them empty. He left them filled with children, with hope, with a future that stretched beyond the stars. The elder stood before the villagers and spoke, her voice trembling with both sorrow and pride. "He came to us with nothing. He gave us everything. Let his name be carried in the blood of our children forever." The crowd wept, but their tears were not only of sadness, they were tears of gratitude, of love, of remembrance. The children he had fathered grew strong. They carried his eyes, his voice, his courage, and through them, the human lived on, not as a wanderer, not as a stranger, but as the foundation of a people who would never forget him. In the end, his legacy was not freedom, nor riches, nor glory. It was life itself. And though the man was gone, the father of generations would echo through time. A human who came seeking work hand became the heart of a new world.